Dark Ruler No More is just an incredible card, there is no denying it. Whether your opponent goes full Kishtira combo, full Sprite combo, or whatever else, it always carries. You get to negate every single monster effect your opponent controls at once, and it's not like your opponent can even negate it with monster effects. Obviously, if your opponent has like Hot Red Dragon, Archfiend Abyss, and like a quickly spell or chop card, then he might be able to negate it, but that's another story for another day. But almost regardless of the kind of deck you're facing, Dark Ruler No More is almost always good, and that really adds to its appeal. And also, zone locking is not really relevant in this format anymore, so it's not like you really have to be afraid of Shangri-La blocking all your zones. Whether your opponent summons like a Rizard and 4 summons or goes for the full Kishtira combo as I said, it doesn't matter, you just negate that shit right away. But with that being said, is Dark Ruler No More really worth main decking or side decking over other hand traps? Obviously, it all depends on what deck you're playing as well as your game plan. If you're playing a trap deck or an OTK deck or a deck that might break when it has too many utility cards, hand traps, or board breakers, then this card might not be the best for you. Therefore, it goes without saying that Dark Ruler is not really good in Labyrinth and in Vanquished Soul as well as Sky Striker. And naturally, this card is also bad against these decks. Look, usually any deck that can play Dark Ruler also loses to the card. But for the most part, I want to say that the most popular decks usually lose to Dark Ruler and you can still play it against them. Now, let's look at the winning deck from Euros, which would be Rika. Main decking 3 Dark Ruler No More in a 45 card deck list, as well as side decking and triple tactic thrusting to be able to search it out really helps. And Rika is probably one of the best decks to be able to use Dark Ruler because it doesn't really have to OTK or diverge away from its usual combo line if it wants to break boards with Dark Ruler. It's not really like Math Mech, which might actually be forced to go into an Access Code Talker to break boards. And the inconvenience again is that not being able to OTK means that you're forced to make negates after you break the board. Otherwise, it kind of defeats the purpose of using the card. And Dark Ruler is not really like an actual board breaker in the real sense of the term, but rather a card that facilitates board breaking. It's not like Regeki or Sphere Mode, for example. If your hand is utter garbage, it is what it is. With Dark Ruler No More, it's not even like you can say activate Dark Ruler and then pass turn, but with Sphere Mode, at least you can go Sphere Mode pass. And if all your hand allows you to do is Dark Ruler into Zeus and then pass turn, then you're also kind of screwed. I want to say even after using Dark Ruler, you're still under a little bit of pressure. For example, let's just say that you're playing Despia, and then you activate Dark Ruler against the full board, and you activate Branded Fusion, and it gets ashed. Your best card just got stopped, and you still have to worry about a bunch of monsters because next turn they're getting unnegated. So again, you have to break the whole board and set up your own board so that your opponent's follow-up does not overwhelm you. Because when you're not hand-trapping your opponents and you're just using board breakers, your opponent still gets a lot of resources to hand so that he can actually play for next turn. And again, back with the Despia example, sure, you can actually use Fallen of Albaz to try to fuse into a Mare Jade, but then you might start losing to hand traps a little bit. Veiler and Infinite Impermanence can actually hurt, although I will say that there are some counters to those counters. In other words, if you have Dark Ruler No More, one of two things might happen. Either you'll have all the gas needed to push through your opponent's interruptions, or you will pass doing pretty much nothing. And this, unfortunately, can happen in a world where people diversify their interruptions by having back row, hand traps, and grave interruptions. Take a look at Rika. It ends on the Concon, which is a Lure of Darkness, the Rika Sheet, which is pretty much a Widow Anchor, and the Princess, which negates a monster effect. So again, Dark Ruler doesn't really solve everything. And this is where other kind of board breakers like Evenly Matched can really shine a little brighter. Because when your hand is absolute dog shit, again just like Sphere Mode, you can at least use Evenly and then pass turn, and your opponent is going to have way less resources. Not to mention that Evenly is insane against trap decks, and that's actually really nice, especially in a format with Labyrinth. Dark Ruler is pretty bad against trap decks, although I will have to say that it doesn't really matter too much because at least Dark Ruler is unnegatable, whereas Evenly is negatable. So you see, it's kind of like a pick your poison kind of thing. By the way, all of this, not even to say that Dark Ruler is remotely close to being bad or anything. I would still have to give Dark Ruler No More a solid 9.5 out of 10 because honestly, these are the only real issues that I could even find with the card. Dark Ruler obviously couldn't be a quickly spell card because otherwise it would be like tier negative infinite billion. And as it currently stands, Dark Ruler is objectively better than Forbidden Droplet because at least you don't have to go like neck 5 in order to use the card to negate a full board. And Forbidden Droplet cannot even be used under a Rizard because you are not legally allowed to send monsters to the graveyard as a cost, whereas Dark Ruler No More can always be used. And look, if you're playing a deck like Runic or Purely, you're discarding so much that even if you Druid going first, it doesn't really matter too much because at least worst case scenario, you can discard it. So worst case scenario, again, in game 1, Dark Ruler No More is a little suboptimal when you Druid going first, but going second, you'll always thank yourself more often than not. So clearly, I've managed to make a lot of arguments for even main decking the card, but I think we can all agree on the fact that this card is 100% a must, at least in your side deck. In a world where this card is insane against the most popular deck, as well as the other really good deck, decks, you really have to consider this card. You just have to be critical of every single card you run and understand when they can be better or worse than other good blowouts. But with that being said, that's all I had for this video. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and also let me know your thoughts about Dark Ruler No More in the comment section below. And I'll see you guys very soon. Peace.